Hello, everybody. This is Ben Schrader and Gavin Ray Kemper from Esri's Professional Services Division here to give you a brief primer on TypeScript, what it is, how you can begin using it, and why you should care. Now, as a developer, especially as a web or JavaScript developer, you know that our field is dynamic and exciting, but you're also acutely aware that web technologies change at a rapid pace and keeping your head above water can be difficult. TypeScript is one such new technology. You may have heard of it in passing, you may have even looked at a tutorial or two online. On the surface, it can be kind of a tough sell. It's the same JavaScript you write all the time, with a few extra layers and boilerplate involved, as if we need more of that in our projects. But there are many good reasons developers use TypeScript, and our goal today is to illuminate some of those reasons. TypeScript can help you write better, more sustainable code. TypeScript can save you from hours of tracking down bugs, and TypeScript can empower you to use cutting-edge build tools and JavaScript language features today. We think that learning TypeScript is worthwhile for all developers, if not for your own projects, then to understand its role in the modern web development landscape, including the Esri technology you work with daily. TypeScript's momentum shows no signs of stopping. If you're worried about a dramatic paradigm shift, then don't be, because the JavaScript skills you've already honed are all you need to get started. So, what is TypeScript and why should I care? TypeScript is an open source programming language developed by Microsoft. It's a superset of JavaScript, which means that the JavaScript you write is also valid TypeScript already. In fact, JavaScript and TypeScript are more identical than not. This makes the learning curve for those with JavaScript knowledge quite simple. Any TypeScript code you write will compile to valid JavaScript, meaning your TypeScript applications will work in any environment where JavaScript works, including most notably web browsers and Node.js. The TypeScript compiler can work in tandem with other development and build tools, so you won't, and shouldn't, have to forfeit things like source maps, hot reloading, and asset bundling. On the right, you'll see an example of some basic TypeScript code taken from the official documentation. Types, written here after individual variable names and a colon, are TypeScript's namesake. The most important distinction between TypeScript and JavaScript is that TypeScript adds optional static typing that JavaScript does not have. There are other differences, but for the sake of this presentation, that's the key one to remember. So that's cool. We have a tool that makes our JavaScript look a little more like C# or Java code. What's the big deal? Well, why should I care? Don't take our word for it. Check out how much the JavaScript ecosystem has begun to embrace TypeScript completely. Your favorite large-scale libraries are probably utilizing it already. Everything from frameworks like Angular and React to the Esri technology you use every day provides robust support for TypeScript development. More on this in a minute. The benefits to you as a developer can also be a game changer. Those of you with backgrounds in strongly typed languages may lament JavaScript's tendency to keep on chugging even with type mismatches. How many times have we forgotten to convert our numbers into strings or vice versa? A TypeScript development environment will ensure that happens a lot less frequently. More bugs will be caught in the development phase instead of later on down the line. This is a win for everyone involved, you as a developer and others involved in your development lifecycle, such as testers or verifiers. Take a look at the image below to see just how beneficial TypeScript can be for your productivity. Imagine not having to reference the ArcGIS API for JavaScript documentation when you need to know how to do something like construct a map view. Thanks to the power of TypeScript and the ArcGIS API for JavaScript support for TypeScript, that is a reality for many developers. Within my text editor, in this case Visual Studio Code, I'm able to see what parameters a map view constructor takes, and I get a helpful description with links right in my development environment that I can use for further reference. This kind of text editor-based inline documentation extends to things like, say, React components or even utility functions that you've written elsewhere in your project. For a little further context, let's dig into where TypeScript fits into the development landscape in 2020. So a lot of us are using frameworks to manage complex web applications, and the good news is that they have robust TypeScript support. Some, like Angular, even run under the assumption that you'll be using TypeScript by default. Adjusting TypeScript settings can be done quickly and easily with a wide array of compiler options. Microsoft's support of TypeScript has been unwavering and shows no sign of slowing down. In fact, if you're using Visual Studio Code, which runs on TypeScript under the hood, You might have already been using TypeScript without realizing it. See the image below for an example of how TypeScript inline documentation is applied to a normal JavaScript function. Additionally, there's no need to go from 0 to 100 overnight. Again, since your valid JavaScript is already valid TypeScript, you can adopt TypeScript into an existing project at a pace comfortable for you and your team. Last but certainly not least, we want to emphasize that TypeScript adheres to the JavaScript spec, including its feature schedule. If you're using technology like Babel, you already know how valuable it is to be able to use the latest and greatest JavaScript features without having to worry about whether or not a client's runtime, such as a browser, supports them. TypeScript has that same functionality built into its spec, so you can go ahead and use your favorite new JavaScript features like class syntax or optional chaining syntax. The idea of JavaScript with types might seem like a bit of an old school concept, but TypeScript is emphatically a modern technology. And with that, I'll pass the mic over to Gavin.
If you're a web developer like we are, you're probably familiar with JavaScript and other front-end technologies. You might want to use TypeScript because it offers type checking that could increase your development pace. Beware though, as you're getting started with development in TypeScript, it may be slow at first because you're not used to adding types. Stick with it for a few weeks or months to see if you can learn it and want to keep going with it. If you're more of an enterprise developer who has experience in C# or Java or some other server or backend technology, you may be a prime candidate for TypeScript, especially if you're working on a front end or a Node.js project now. You're already used to types, so TypeScript totally makes sense. Note that TypeScript does not preclude you from needing to know JavaScript, though. In fact, as we mentioned before, TypeScript follows closely the new features of JavaScript, so you'll have to get a bit familiar with the ever-changing JavaScript ecosystem. The bottom line to both groups, though, is that there have been many people and projects that have determined that TypeScript has reduced bugs in their codebase. In this case pictured, Airbnb analyzed their codebase and estimated that 38% of their bugs would have been preventable with TypeScript. It's these reasons that people are making TypeScript so popular in 2020. In the recent 2019 State of JavaScript survey, TypeScript was ranked top among its peers of JavaScript flavors like Elm and ReasonML. It seems like people who use TypeScript generally like it and want to use it again, as this graph, also from the State of JavaScript survey, shows. The salmon color here is meaning I've used it before and would use it again. The GitHub State of the Octoverse yearly analysis from 2019 also showed TypeScript is quite popular in terms of number of repositories stored in GitHub. You can see here its popularity gained a lot of ground in 2018 and continued through 2019. I would not want to stand up here and tell you that every single person in the world is switching to TypeScript today. There are certainly people who aren't huge fans or have seen some challenges with using it. There's certainly a cost to adding the overhead of TypeScript and types to your code, but does that outweigh the benefits? I think for many people the answer is that over time the benefits are worth the costs, but do your own research before diving in. There has even been notable movement in projects and people embracing TypeScript in 2019. For example, the Facebook Jest testing framework is using TypeScript now. The React.js CLI has TypeScript as a first-class citizen, and people seem to be moving to TypeScript from Flow, which is a project similar to TypeScript. Teams at Esri are certainly embracing TypeScript. The team that creates the ArcGIS API for JavaScript uses TypeScript in their source code when building the project, as does the ArcGIS REST.js, the ArcGIS Real-Time team, and the Experience Builder is exposing React with TypeScript as the primary way to extend the platform when you're creating custom widgets. So if you want to build custom widgets with Experience Builder, you will be using TypeScript. So there are a couple ways to get started with using TypeScript if you're building a web application using the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. There's a guide page here on developers.arcgis.com that you can read a lot about getting started. There's also a full template app that you can start as a boilerplate out on the JS API resources GitHub repository. Or if you already have a project that's started, you can just go into that project, run npm install at types/ArcGIS API to get started and have those types in there. I now wanted to show you how TypeScript works within a text editor. So let me switch over to Visual Studio Code. And I have a TypeScript project open, and it's got some typical ArcGIS API for JavaScript code in here. It's importing a map, it's creating a map view. So let's say we wanted to continue this code and create maybe a spatial reference. The first thing you'll notice is that it has really good autocomplete or IntelliSense while I'm typing. You can see that spatial reference is automatically matched here. It tells me a little bit of information about that, and I can even click a link to see the documentation for spatial reference. So I'll just let it autocomplete that for me, and you'll see when I did that, it automatically added the import statement for spatial reference up there, which is really nice. As I'm continuing typing out this line, I'm going to pass my parameters, and maybe I want to set my spatial reference to 4326, WGIS 84, and I immediately can noticing this red underline under here, and if I hover my mouse, it says type 4326 has no properties in common with the type spatial reference properties. So that's TypeScript telling me there's an issue here. This might traditionally be a bug. If I was in the JavaScript world, I would save it out, switch over to the browser, run my code, and then see that it's a bug. But here I'm catching it early, and it's saying that no properties in common, so that's telling me I need to have an object with properties that are in common with what it's expecting. So as I create an object, if I open up the autocomplete here, because TypeScript knows what I'm doing, it actually tells me what properties I can send in. And so I want to send in, I think, a WKID. Let me read the documentation here. I could click, again, read more if I want to read more, but yeah, I think that's what I want, so I'll do that. And 4326, and now TypeScript is not complaining. Everything's good. So this is an example of how TypeScript in your IDE might save you from committing some bugs or wasting some time on bugs. So wrapping it up here, some resources. If you Google TypeScript or just go to the website typescriptlang.org, that's where all the main resources are. That's the homepage for TypeScript. There's a TS conference every year, and there are some videos out there at tsconf.io. Those are really good if you're trying to get an understanding of the ecosystem and an understanding of the community. And like I said before, go to the JavaScript API documentation if you want to learn how to use TypeScript with the JS API. So that's all we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this information about TypeScript, and I hope you enjoy using TypeScript in 2020. Thanks.